Leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale at Drive. Call 0845 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 5 here on LBC, broadcasting across the United Kingdom. This hour we have Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Ed Balls, in the studio to take your calls. The number to call, 0845 6060 973. You can text us on 84850, tweet at LBC, and you can email ian at lbc.co.uk. There are lots of questions that you can put to Ed. For example, you might want to ask him about the interview I've done with Danny Alexander. You can also watch us live on our website at lbc.co.uk. That's Call Balls between now and 6 here on LBC. Ed Balls, you don't get a build-up like that too often, do you?
Call Balls.
Do you think
I'm not totally sure it's going to catch on.
You're not totally sure?
I'm not sure it's going to catch on.
Well, we had a hatty chat yesterday. So now you're looking a bit...
Congratulations, by the way, on going national.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Or international, really, because presumably across the UK.
Yeah, across the UK, and we can obviously be heard online throughout the world. Now, you didn't have your normal sort of cheerful demeanour as you walked into the studio, and I thought, oh dear, what has happened?
I know, I normally bounce in.
But you didn't today.
I've actually found today very difficult. It's been a tough day. And nothing to do with politics. I was at Upton Park last night and watching West Ham Norwich City, Premiership Norwich City, as we still like to say in Norfolk. They were really good last night. And if I'm honest with you, West Ham were on the back foot all the way through. And then 2 late goals. We missed 5 gilt-edged chances. You won 2-0 and made your goalkeeper the man of the match. He was superb, but
he's a great goalkeeper. But we're better not talk football. We're going to cheer you up over the course of the next hour. We're going to have brilliant calls from our listeners.
Great.
They might be a bit probing. They might be a bit anti. Who knows? We'll find out. 0845 6060 973 is the number to call if you'd like to put your question to Ed Balls. Let me start off, though, by asking you about what I've just been talking to Danny Alexander about. George Osborne is going to be speaking tomorrow about whether Scotland should be allowed to keep the pound if they go independent. Nicola Sturgeon was on this radio station about, just over an hour ago, accusing the 3 British political parties of bullying Scotland. And you can see what she means. She thinks you've all got together and colluded on this, and it's a stitch-up.
Well, the reason we're having these debates is not because of the Labour Party here in the UK or the Conservative Party or the Liberal Democrats, is because the Scottish Nationalist Party decided to launch a campaign to take Scotland out of the Union. Now, I don't want that. I think it would be bad for Scotland, it would be bad for the UK. I think we need Scotland in the UK and it's good for jobs and for our economy. But it's the SNP who've decided to put independence on the agenda. Now, becoming independent has some consequences. And if Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond don't like facing up to a debate about those consequences, if they fear the Scottish people when they think this through will conclude that it would be a catastrophic mistake, well, that's not bullying, it's welcome to the real world.
It's a lack of understanding what the word independence actually means, isn't it? Because if you don't have your own currency, and you can't control your own currency, effectively, you can't control your own government. You can't control your public spending. It goes back to the argument on the euro, really, doesn't it?
I think, though, what happened was that Alex Salmond thought he could leave the UK, break with England and Wales and Northern Ireland, and then join not just the European Union, but the euro single currency. So he always knew that for Scotland to have its own currency would be destabilising, expensive, would cause huge problems for Scottish banks. But he thought he could join the euro instead. What we've now seen in the euro, after the turbulence of the last few years, is this is a pretty unattractive prospect for Scotland. And more than that, it would require joining a more onerous banking union, a big fiscal union, political integration. So that option's off the table. What's he doing? Is he saying, well, OK, in that case, Scotland will have its own currency? He's trying to say that somehow Scotland can be independent, break from the rest of the UK, but still use the pound sterling. Well, that would require integration. It would require a banking union, a fiscal union, a political union. There's a fundamental intellectual problem for Alex Salmond. He wants to break from the UK, but also keep the pound, even if that means a closer relationship to the UK. You can't have your cake and eat it.
What about keeping the Queen?
Well, we have sovereign nations around the world who've kept the Queen, and I think the Queen is very important in Scotland, and that would be true independent of whether they became a sovereign nation.
Maybe we should keep a list of what Alex Salmond would like to keep. Because it's a sort of, I call it a pick and mix independence. It's you can adopt that phrase if you like. I'll assign copyright to you.
It's not even clear, which bits he actually wants to become independent, because so much. What we have is a United Kingdom in which you can have a Welsh and a Scottish executive in a separate country. You have some independence, some devolution, separate decision making, but we're all part of a union. Alex Salmond is trying to pretend he can go a step further and become a separate independent sovereign state, but he wants to also pretend to the Scottish people that somehow he can keep all of the benefits of the union. It won't make any difference, and that's just not in the real world. I've been up in Scotland the last few weeks and said, in the end, it's for Scotland. They must decide. I don't think it's right for us to tell Scotland what to do, but we're clear. It is very unlikely. I don't see how you could have a negotiation about a Scottish separate country keeping the pound, which would add up either for Scotland or for the rest of the United Kingdom, and that's the debate we're going to be carrying on tomorrow.
You would rule out a currency union with Scotland?
I think it's. I've said in the last few weeks that it would be very difficult indeed. And tomorrow, the Treasury is publishing an economic report on these matters. I know that the Bank of England Governor, Mark Carney, was up in Scotland a week or so ago, setting out how difficult it would be. And the paper which is being published tomorrow by the Treasury, I think, will frame the debate for the coming weeks. And I'm going to read that paper overnight, and I'll talk about that tomorrow.
Well, it's very good of you to give us Treasury thinking on this policy, because they're apparently saying nothing today. So I'm sure they'll appreciate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
sorry about that.
Nice little alliance here building.
I think. Well, look,
for a change,
we know the Chancellor's going to be making a speech tomorrow, and I'm sure there'll be supporting documentation. In fact, I know there'll be supporting documentation.
So you have been talking.
And I know that's, well, of course, the people talk all the time.
Indeed.
Even me and Nick Clegg.
Do you?
Once.
You'll be wearing his headphones in a minute, by the way, just to warn you.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, there is a Nick Clegg sign on them. We'll have to get a pair made specially for you. Anyway, let's do.
I thought I was depressed because Norwich lost last night, but you've just cheered me up there. Wearing Nick Clegg's headphones. Goodness me!
I should explain. We are online. We're being filmed through the LBC website, so I think there's a little look of disgust there when you.
It's important to make clear, though, that I am wearing a necktie, because this is being live streamed.
Unlike me.
Our presenter.
See, Michael Grove would approve of you, but wouldn't approve of me.
I think you look a bit louche, to be honest.
Well, that's not the first time anyone said that. Let's go to the calls. John is in Walthamstow. Hello, John.
Hello.
John, what would you like to ask Ed?
Hi there, John.
Can you just tell me, because I've read one figure, what the percentage UK debt, including PFI and pensions, the total UK debt as a percentage of GDP is?
Well, when we came into government in 97, it was 42%. We got it down to a low of the low 30s.
No, but including all debt.
Including public debt and private debt.
Yeah.
I've not got the number in my head at the moment.
Could you make a guess to the nearest 100%?
It would. Well, it's certainly if it's public and private debt, it's certainly over 100%.
Yeah, but which 100?
Well, you tell us, John. You've got the figure at your hand.
Well, it's over 800%. I read.
But I mean, the traditional figure that's quoted is not including private debt. I'm not sure that is actually a very meaningful statistic if you include private debt, because the government hasn't actually got a lot of control over that.
But doesn't it mean we're in some sort of Ponzi scheme where it's just never going to be repaid?
I think the important thing, John, is that if you keep your inflation low, and if people's incomes are rising, and if people and companies are given good advice and are able to make sensible decisions within the right kind of regulatory framework, then it's a good thing that people like you and me can borrow money today to get a mortgage, to buy our home, and then be able to then repay that over a number of years. And exactly the same things happens in companies. Small businesses take out a loan in order to buy the initial materials they need, or the next stage of their capital investment, in order to then earn a return. There's nothing inherently wrong with borrowing. The question is it sustainable? Is there an income stream which can repay it back? Are you doing it within a safe and sound framework? And that is something which governments have a duty to do. But the view which says consumers shouldn't borrow, companies shouldn't borrow, government shouldn't borrow, I think that takes you back to a pretty archaic kind of economy.
I'm sure we'll return to the issue of borrowing in other calls. 0845 6060 973 if you'd like to put your question to Ed Balls. This is LBC, it's 5:15.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC, car insurance you can trust from the motoring experts.
A Temper mattress lets you find your most comfortable position and supports you there, giving you the feeling of complete weightlessness and the best night's sleep possible. And there's never been a better time to buy a Temper mattress, with a sale now on at all Temper stockists. Visit temper.com for more details.
Churchill! Churchill!
Oh,
if you want your 80s mixtape on, I'll put your 80s mixtape on, okay? There! See? 80s mixtape on. Happy?
Oh, yes.
Honestly, you and your 80s obsession.
For an 80% good driver discount, chat to Churchill. Applies to new customers with 8+ years no claim discount for the first year. Minimum premium applies, excludes NI.
Here's another tip from IKEA. Put some pressure on your food. A pressure cooker reduces cooking times by 50%. So it also uses less energy, you see. And it's better at keeping all the delicious vitamins and minerals in your food. So stop giving your food an easy ride. Under pressure, it's capable of so much more. It's a small thing that could make a big difference. That's the wonderful everyday from IKEA. For more tips, visit us online.
It's 5:16 news headlines with Simon Conway.
Winds of more than 100 miles per hour have been recorded as a huge storm hits the UK. More than 70,000 are thought to be without power. Chief Secretary to the Treasury Danny Alexander has signalled to LBC that the government will refuse to enter a currency union with Scotland if it votes for independence in the referendum. Comedian Freddie Starr is going to the High Court to challenge the way police and prosecutors have handled sex crime allegations against him. The weather, severe winds gradually easing, some wintry showers later tonight, lows of 1 degree. This is LBC, the travel's next.
Greetings to you too, Rex. I am Brian of Confused.com. Oh, your master's out? Well, tell him he could save over £263 on his home insurance through Confused.com. What do you mean he's going to need it? You've done what? Oh, not on the Persian rug, Rex. Confused.com.
10% of customers saved at least £268 against their previous renewal price October-December 2013.
I'm Amy Solomon in the LBC Travel Centre. The clockwise M25 still queuing around from 28 at the Brook Street roundabout to the Dartford crossing after the QE2 bridge was closed earlier because of the wind. Anti-clockwise solid from 4 at Orpington. On the northern stretch, anti-clockwise down to 1 lane between junction 23 at South Mims and 22 at London Coney, with debris on the road, still very slow from 25 at Enfield. Better news for this stretch between 10 at the Wisley Interchange and 9 at Leatherhead. The inside lane was closed because of flooding, but that's all back open now. In Poplar, the A13, that's queuing out of town. It's closed near Upper North Street along East India Dock Road because of an accident. After the strong winds in the city, Minories is closed northbound near Tower Hill. Some scaffoldings become unstable, and Whitehorse Road's closed in Croydon near Windmill Road as a building's roof has collapsed. A very limited train service is running between Paddington and Reading through to Oxford, with journey times being extended by around an hour after flooding as well. Keeping you moving, your next travel updates in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Save time and money by meeting online from anywhere. This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
There have just been 3 explosions which have ripped through the embassy building. Smoke is wafting over the roofs now, and there are policemen on the balcony.
40 years of big issue stories and breaking news.
I can see the World Trade Center now. I think it hit about 20 stories below the very top.
This is Tony Blair. I'm taking your calls, and the next call is from Kate.
Now leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with the Financial Times. for in-depth comment and analysis on UK business.
For me, it's the crisp, clear chill of winter. I love it. Every season has its colours, and at this time of the year it's clean white frosts, sharp blue skies, and hot red soup. There's something truly wonderful about coming in from the cold to a steaming hot bowl of tomato soup, watching crusty hunks of bread soften and yield to its warmth. It makes me feel warmed up and chilled out, if that makes sense. But the soup always has to be Heinz.
Seizing opportunities, following your gut. That's what got your company to where it is today. But knowing the right time to sell your business may require a little more forethought than your gut can give. Barnes Rofe can help you identify the right time to sell and devise the best strategy to get your business there. See? Those clever accountants for business strike again. To discuss all your options with a Barnes Rofe partner, visit barnesrofe.com/radio.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
5:20 here on LBC. You're listening to Call Balls with Ed Balls. He's here to take your calls. 0845 6060 973. Politics Home on Twitter are quoting you on this programme, saying there's nothing inherently wrong with borrowing. And you're right, there isn't. But it is a political problem, though, for you, isn't it? Because, of course, the Conservatives attack you for over-borrowing, overspending when Labour was last in power. And they say, well, why would you let them do it all again?
But the point I just made is that there's loads of people listening to your programme who have taken out a mortgage and borrowed to buy their home. And there's companies who go to the banks to borrow to invest for the future. And part of our problem at the moment is that bank lending to companies who want to borrow has continued to fall. So, of course, it's the case. The gentleman asked us about total borrowing in the economy. Of course, there's nothing wrong with individuals and companies borrowing. As for the government, we need to get the level of government borrowing down because it's too high. And I've said the next Labour government will balance the books in the next Parliament. We'll get the national debt falling. But there is a debate about whether, when you're making long-term infrastructure investments, whether for a government to access global capital markets, bring in some money and then generate a return, that can be a good thing to do. But we need to get the national debt down and we need to reduce government borrowing. And
But doesn't that conflict with what you've also said, where you said that you don't really regret any of the spending and borrowing that was done under the last government?
Well, I didn't quite say. Well,
I think you said that you didn't regret borrowing a single penny that was borrowed in the last government.
What I said was, well, look, of course we regret the rise in the deficit after 2007, but that didn't happen because of government spending. That happened because of a huge fall in tax revenues coming into the Exchequer after the global financial crisis. And the thing which we should have done was regulated the banks and the financial services in a much tougher way here and around the world, so that a country which before that had low national debt and had low inflation could have continued to grow without a global financial crisis. But the idea, which the Tories are always going to want to peddle, that somehow the global financial crisis around the world was caused by me and Labour's investment in the National Health Service, if I'm honest with you, Ian, is utter, total nonsense. And I'll argue against that every time. There was areas where we didn't spend money in the right way. I'd much rather also we'd spent less on housing benefit, but to do that would have needed to invest more in houses. We've had a shortage of housing in our country. It wasn't the level of spending which was the problem in 2007. It was the global financial crisis. Right, and I'll say that till the cows come home.
Let's go to your calls. Roy is in Brookman's Park. Hello, Roy.
Yes, good afternoon, Jim. Thank you.
Hi there, Roy.
Thank you for taking my call. Just to let you know, I'm a Conservative, though brought up in a Labour household, so I want you to know where I'm coming from. What I find I can't understand is simple mathematics that you Labour chancellors can't seem to get your head around. Every Labour government has taxed and taxed, whereas if you look under Lawson, when he reduced it to 35%, you actually get more money in. It is a known fiscal fact throughout the world that when you get your tax down to, say, 35%, you actually get more money in than when you tax at 50%. But it seems to me all you do is, for political reasons, say 50, 60%, whereas proven fact that, the less you tax to a certain percent, say 25, 35, you actually get more money
essentially, you're quoting what economists would call the Laffer curve, aren't you? There is a point at which you actually get more money in the lower tax, and it is about 35%, 40%, and that's what most other countries have as a top rate, isn't it? Why do you think we should have a higher rate than other countries?
Well, it's not 35% for the top rate. That isn't what the international estimates say.
Very few countries have a top rate higher than 40%.
A number of countries have a top rate higher than 40%. A number of countries have a top rate higher than 50%. But to answer your question, Roy, you mentioned Nigel Lawson in 1988 it was. For the previous 9 years of the Conservative administration, Margaret Thatcher had a top rate of income tax of 60%.
Well, it went down from 83 to 60, didn't it, in 1979?
And it was kept at 60% for almost all of Margaret Thatcher's time in government. She then reduced it to 40%. It stayed at 40% for a number of years, but during the global financial crisis and its aftermath, Labour put it back to 50% because we needed to bring
for the last month of the Labour government.
Yeah, because we needed to bring in more revenue to get the deficit down. There was an International Monetary Fund report in the autumn, which looked at what the revenue maximising rate for Britain would be, because clearly, Roy's right, if it was very high, you would lose money. If it was down to very low levels, you would lose money as well. So the question is, what is the right level? The IMF said between 50 and 60%. In my view, 50% is the upper limit. I would like to see it lower than that, but we need to have it at that level to bring in revenue while we get the deficit down.
But George Osborne and the Treasury say actually it doesn't bring in higher revenue. They're saying they're getting much higher revenues from a 45p rate.
They don't say that, Ian.
Well, they do. I've heard them.
Well, even the government's own estimates of the maximising rate is higher than 45p, and they were ministerial decisions. Even the government says that it's £100 million between 50 and 45. What they also admit is that the existing people paying the top rate of tax, earning over £150,000, if you cut the rate from 50 to 45, they get a gain of over £3 billion. For somebody earning over £1 million, these are huge tax cuts into tens, hundreds of thousands of pounds. They try to say that somehow all these people will then volunteer to pay a lot more tax, or there'll be more top rate taxpayers, and they'll recoup the money, but they don't say they'll recoup all of the money. The IFS and the OBR, the independent experts, say these are all highly uncertain. It will definitely raise hundreds of millions of pounds. I don't think you can justify, at a time when most people are seeing their living standards falling and are paying more tax, giving colossal tax cuts to the richest people. I think you need to make sure everybody's bearing a share of the burden. Therefore, Labour will balance the books in the next Parliament and get the national debt falling, including by keeping the 50p rate while we do that.
Quick response from you, Roy.
Yes, first of all, he talked about Margaret Thatcher. He forgets it was Dennis Healy who was taxing us at 98%, and we had to go to the World Monetary Bank to help us out. So that's quite, he's not telling the whole truth. It was a leftover from the Labour government.
Yeah, but Roy, I was just making the point. Look, I don't want to go back to the levels which Conservative Chancellor Barber and Dennis Healy had in the 1970s. I was only pointing out to you that you were Conservative and Margaret Thatcher had a top rate of tax of 60% in almost every year when she was the Prime Minister. I was just pointing that's a fact. You can draw what conclusion you want from that. I don't want to have the Thatcher 60p rate.
Roy, thank you for that. Let's go to Mike in Cheshunt. Hello, Mike.
Good evening, Ian. Good evening, Mr. Balls.
Hi, Mike.
Quite rightly, in the past, you've expressed your doubts and concerns about the benefits of HS2. I agree with your views, which is obviously something that's quite pleasing for you to have somebody who agrees with you. But anyway, do you think that...
Are you a Conservative, Mike?
I'm open to being changed, Ed, to be honest.
So you're a Conservative potential switcher?
A floater?
Well, yes, indeed. I've got an open mind.
Politics hangs in the balance in this phone call. I hope I answer it right.
Come on, let's get the question out.
Right, the question is this. Would you, Labour, would you have a close look at this project and reconsider whether you will continue to support the government? It clearly has very little support in the country.
Well, it's a concise question. You have expressed doubts about HS2, unlike some of your shadow cabinet colleagues. You really don't want it to happen, do you?
Well, look, to answer Mike's question concisely, the answer, Mike, is yes. And I hope that's going to be.
I've forgotten what the question was.
And I hope that's going to be enough to persuade you to switch over.
What are you saying yes to?
Mike said, would we have a close look at this project? And we must. I have said to the government two things. One, the costs have gone up too much and there's not a blank cheque. And secondly, we need to look at all of this project, the first stage up to Birmingham and then the second stage north of Birmingham and ask the question, is this the best way to use over £40 billion of public money to improve rail capacity and to make sure we have strong economies across the United Kingdom? I had a very good meeting this week with Sir David Higgins, who's the chair of HS2. I've met him before. I'd like to have been
a fly on the wall on that.
And he's going to, and he, when he took over and said he was going to be making a report on these issues in the coming weeks. And I think there is a real determination to make sure we get value for money from this project. And I think that is very, very important indeed.
But if you draw a scale of 0 to 100, and Andrew Adonis is at 100, you're more like 10 to 20, aren't you?
I don't think you can reduce politics to such a simple scale. Not only because
I can.
Well, no, because I had two tests, and therefore it's not going to go on to your 0 to 100. One, are the costs under control? And secondly, are we sure that in every stage of this project, stage 1 and stage 2, is the best way to spend the money? Mike asked for a close look, and he's right. And I don't think at the moment the government's taken the proper approach on this. We've ended up the Chancellor of the Exchequer should be somebody who is a stickler for value for money. Never about blank cheques, not a cheerleader for projects, but somebody who says we've got to stand up for the taxpayer. And the choices, I think, at the moment on HS2, George Osborne, cheerleader, Ed Balls, guarantor of probity and public spending. And I think the public expect the latter.
Mike in Cheshunt, one-word answer. Are you convinced by Ed Balls' answer? Will you be voting Labour?
Don't answer, Mike. It's private.
No, I'm convinced because the project is frankly ridiculously expensive and the route is absolutely illogical and it really needs going back to the drawing board.
Well, Mike, I think you're on the verge of switching there, so that's one vote you might have got there from doing this programme. Ed, you're listening to LBC. It's 5:31. News headlines with Simon Conway.
Strong winds and huge waves have hit the west and southwest of Britain. The strongest gale was recorded at 108 miles per hour in Aberdaron in North Wales. The Thames is predicted to rise to its highest level in more than 60 years in some places. Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Danny Alexander, has signalled to LBC that the government will block a currency union with Scotland if the country votes for independence. The Treasury is due to publish a report tomorrow. Shadow Chancellor Ed Balls has also told Ian a currency union would be very difficult. Jurors at the sex offences trial of Dave Lee Travis have been discharged for the third day running. Deliberations began on Monday and will resume again tomorrow. The judge has told the jury to take as much time as it needs. The 68-year-old denies all the charges. England manager Roy Hodgson has ruled out the possibility of John Terry coming out of international retirement for the World Cup. The former captain stepped down from representing his country in 2012. The FTSE closed up too at 66.75 and the weather very windy this evening. The gusts will gradually ease through the night. The rain clearing northeastwards, turning to sleet and snow over parts of Scotland. Showers and longer spells in the west tomorrow. Lows tonight of 1 degree. LBC News Time, it's 5:32.
I'm Amy Solomon in the LBC Travel Centre. The clockwise M25 is queuing between junctions 28 at the Brook Street roundabout and the Dartford crossing after the QE2 bridge was closed earlier because of the wind. Anti-clockwise still looking slow from 4 at Orpington. On the northern stretch, anti-clockwise is queuing between junctions 25 at Enfield and 22 at London Colney after some debris was blown onto the road earlier. In Poplar, the A13's queuing out of town from the Rotherhithe Tunnel. It's still closed near Upper North Street along East India Dock Road for accident investigation works. And after the strong wind in the city, Minories is closed northbound near Tower Hill. Some scaffolding has become unstable. Also, Whitehorse Road is closed in Croydon near Windmill Road as a building's roof has collapsed. It's very slow in the area. On the trains, a very limited service is running between Paddington and Reading through to Oxford, with journey times being extended by around an hour after flooding. And Southern and Gatwick Express trains are delayed by 20 minutes through Gatwick Airport because of a signalling problem now. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
with gotomeeting.co.uk. Fast, easy online meetings. Go online for a free 30-day trial.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With the RAC, keeping you motoring this winter.
Churchill. Churchill.
Oh,
If you want your 80s mixtape on, I'll put your 80s mixtape on, okay? There. See? 80s mixtape on. Happy?
Oh, yes.
Honestly, you and your 80s obsession.
For an 80% good driver discount, chat to Churchill. Applies to new customers with 8+ years no claim discount for the first year. Minimum premium applies, excludes NI.
Darren, seriously, it's fine. Don't worry about those conference calls that only you are allowed to set up but can't ever arrange on time, or your video conference system that always fails when I need it most. You see, I've had enough. So I used a little can-do initiative and hooked up with Powwow Now, which means that now I can do all the things that you can't. So don't bother about it. In fact, why even bother coming in again? Ever.
Jump on an instant contract-free conference call at powwownow.co.uk. Powwow Now. Let's get it done.
Still feeling wintry and cold? Wish you could be somewhere warm and tropical? Visit Kew Gardens and you won't need to go far amongst the spectacular array of orchids. Feel the warmth of the tropics and immerse yourself in a world of colour only until the 9th of March. Book your tickets online at kew.org. Enjoy the warmth at Kew Gardens.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
25 minutes to 5, I do apologise. Let's get a business update from Ben Kumar at 7 Investment Management. Ben, good evening.
Good evening, Ian.
Now, reaction to Mark Carney dropping the link between unemployment and interest rates. How's that gone down?
Well, it's been foreseen for a while. Everyone said he can't keep going like this. Unemployment will get to 7% sooner than he thinks. So he's now said we're going to look at wider indicators to judge when we're going to raise the interest rate. But the market still hasn't particularly believed him. The pound's been quite a lot stronger today on the thought that perhaps interest rates will rise sooner than we think.
And Manchester United, I'm sure Ed Balls is going to be interested in this, have announced record revenues in the last quarter.
Yes, so they saw an 11.6% rise in revenue in the last quarter, 122.9 million in the last 3 months of 2013. However, all of their revenue predictions were based, and we talked about this about 6 months ago, on them finishing 4th in the league. They're currently languishing in 7th, and everyone's asking...
Lucky them. Ed would like to make a comment.
I think there'll be rather a lot of Man U supporters around the country who will all be thinking if only they could spend some of those revenues and buy some players, they might have a better chance of getting to 4th rather than 8th, 9th or 10th.
Do you think they should borrow more?
Do I? I think Manchester United have borrowed a very, very, very large amount of money, and the same thing is true of Chelsea and pretty much every other Premiership football club. It's the real world, in.
Now, how did the markets finish?
The FTSE was about flat to yesterday, finishing at 6675, but the pound, like I said, was a lot stronger, up 1% against the euro to €1.22, and up almost 1% against the dollar to 165.5.
Now, you're all into all these financial things. Have you got a question for Ed Balls?
I don't particularly have one. Can
I ask one then?
Of course.
What's happened to the yield curve? Have expectations of short and long rates gone up over the course of the day since Mark Carney's statement?
Yeah, the long rates curve has pushed up quite a bit. Not massively, but anything in that sort of end. The short rates have obviously stayed quite low because we don't see it coming in at least the next couple of months.
I'm glad you could answer that, Ben, because I wouldn't have been able to. Ben Kumar, thank you very much. That's Ben Kumar from 7 Investment Management.
LBC Business.
With cyberstreetwise.com, the first step to protecting your company from online fraud.
It's 5:38. Now, in case you hadn't gathered, Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor, is with us taking your calls. If you want to look on our website, you can watch us live as well at lbc.co.uk. He's waving now, which is nice. Norman is in Rickmansworth. Hello, Norman.
Hello. Today we've been spending time... Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Today we've been spending time trying to get votes, and I'm going to put my vote on the line and available to you. In order to get that vote, I need an honest answer to some questions, which so far you have not given. You've been totally evasive.
Yeah.
When you say, for example, that you're going to balance the budget deficit, when you're asked in the first question what the budget deficit was, you didn't know. And you don't know.
Well, to be fair, he was asked about the level of debt, not the budget deficit, which are two different things.
Well, he was asked about the level of debt, and he doesn't know. Well, that's in effect what balancing the books is all about.
No, because I was asked it. No, Norman, because the caller asked not about the level of public debt. But he asked about the overall level of private and public debt. And I have to say, I carried lots of figures around in my head, but I couldn't actually quote that precise figure. It's a large number, and because, to be honest, private debt is a very big number. But anyway, I can say to you...
Actually, I would like to just add one
question. I apologise.
I remember. I haven't actually asked the main question on the
it's fine.
Just on that subject, because debt, I'd like to get very clear.
Good.
I was listening to Gordon Brown once in a committee, and he was asked. The questions went like this to him: Mr. Brown, what is the level of debt? He said, it's high. They said, if you include pensions, what would be the position? If you actually include public liability pensions, what would be the position? He said, I don't want to answer that question. He said, yes, you must include it in your figures. You don't include it in any of your figures. He said, well, I'm not going to answer that question.
Well, I think we need to get to your question, Norman, frankly.
Well, let me just finish. He answered in the end saying I'd have to close the country if I told the truth. Now, you aren't telling the truth
Norman, with all due respect, I would be extremely surprised if any politician would say it quite that way.
I promise you that. I promise
Come on, Norman,
anyway,
get to your question,
my
please.
question is this. I want to know if this is my question.
Go on.
Will you maintain benefits and public service and public servants' wages, pensions, and the number of people employed at their current levels, or will you make any cuts?
There's going to have to be cuts, Norman.
What kind of cuts?
Well, look, I've said that coming into government in 2015, we're going to have to see cuts in overall public spending. I think the cuts are going to continue into the next Parliament. I can't promise. I want to get the budget balanced as soon as I can in the next Parliament. I want the national debt falling. It depends hugely on what happens to the economy, but there's going to be a very tough public spending round in 2015-16. There'll have to be cuts. To be fair, over the last few years, Labour and Conservative governments have increased the retirement age, and we've made changes to public pension provision to make them fair but also affordable. And over a 30 or 40-year view, the percentage of our economy which goes on those pension liabilities actually falls now rather than rises. So there have been some big long-term savings made already. There'll be cuts under the next Labour government in 2015-16. I'd like to cut the bills of unemployment as well.
But where's
Norman?
the beef? Because you made, I think, a very important speech a few weeks ago on this and said that you wanted to balance the books.
Yep.
It was widely praised by many people, but they did question, well, it's all very well saying we want to balance the books. How are you going to do it? It's all very well saying there are going to have to be cuts, but at some point you're going to have to give us the detail of where those cuts are going to fall.
Well, I've said that in 2015-16, which is the only year the Chancellor of the Exchequer has set out detailed spending plans for departments, I've said we're going to match those spending plans for day-to-day spending. There's an issue about capital spending. Look, all this debate at the moment today about the cuts in floods investment, we pay a long-term price for those kind of cuts. So there's an issue
started under your government, actually.
Well, look. The point I'm making is that there's a sensible debate to be had about capital investment for the future. We will match on day-to-day spending. I have to say, the Prime Minister today, twice in Prime Minister's questions, referred to the fact that I, as Labour's Shadow Chancellor, have started a zero-based public spending review. I have to say it's the first good publicity David Cameron has given me at Prime Minister's questions in the last 3.5 years.
This
and
is
we're
true,
going to look at priorities for spending.
Yeah, but you still haven't given me a single example of anything that you would cut. You can't say to me, in the welfare budget, we're going to cut X or Y or Z.
I can.
Go on then.
We're going to take away the winter allowance from the richest 5% of pensioners.
But that'll save what? How much will that save?
Well,
a pittance.
It's a saving that David Cameron and George Osborne are too politically afraid to sign up to.
I have to say, I'm on your side on that one. However,
that was one.
That's what, 200-300 million? I mean, you've got to save billions.
Well, look, it's in 15-16, we'll match their spending, but we'll do things in a different way. We support raising the retirement age. We're going to restrict the winter allowance. We're going to have a jobs programme which will be compulsory to get young people back to work on and save on that part of the benefits bill. I've said to all my cabinet colleagues, any commitments we make have got to be fully costed and paid for. We're going to get the deficit down by keeping the 50p top rate of tax. We will only be able to introduce a 10p starting rate of tax to ease the pressure for families if we can raise the money elsewhere.
People are only going to be impressed when you can come on programmes like this and say, right, yeah, we'll cut the winter allowance. That's going to save 300 billion. But this is going to save, over the term of Parliament, is going to save us 12 billion or something, because you've got to deal in those sums to get the deficit down.
We are going to balance the books in the next Parliament. We're going to get the national debt falling. The spending review in 15-16 is tough, and we're going to match it. I've also set out further tax rises and spending cuts we'll have to make, which go beyond spending cuts and tax rises George Osborne's willing to commit to. We'll get the job done. But we'll do it in a different way, Ian, because we'll do it in a fairer way.
Okay, well, we will see. I mean, I'm going to repeat what I just said, because I don't think you're going to get away with being just quoting the winter fuel allowance as something you'll cut. At some point between now and the election, you're going to have to come out with a detailed list of things that you'll cut. Otherwise, people won't think you're credible.
Well, in 2015-16, where there are plans set out by the government, I've said to my shadow cabinet colleagues, we're going to have to work with these very tough plans, and any changes will have to happen within those plans. There'll be no extra money. For 16-17 and 17-18, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, has given us no details of either his departmental or welfare cuts, and partly because it's 3 years ahead and he doesn't really know where we're going to be. I'm going to say to you very clearly, we're going to balance the books.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to get any further on that one. 0845 6060 973. That's the number to call if you'd like to ask Ed Balls a question. This is LBC. It's 5:45.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
With RAC Accident Care. They'll take the strain should the worst happen this winter.
If you run a business that involves a lot of paperwork, your staff can spend large chunks of their day opening mail, processing documents, and endless filing. So ask yourself, how much more productive would your business be if someone else did all that for you? The Document Warehouse's off-site mailroom services can seriously reduce your costs and increase your business efficiency. Find out more at thedocumentwarehouse.com. The Document Warehouse. The paperwork people.
Thing is, Steve, you love doing things by the book. I love getting things done. I'm a can and you're a can't. So I'm declaring war on you pencil-pushing, box-ticking power trippers and giving you one last box to tick. Did he get it done despite all my obstructions? Tick. And I did it on an instant Powwow Now conference call. No contracts, no hassle, no fuss. So now I've got Powwow Now. What do I need you for?
Body swerve the can'ts in your office with an instant conference call at powwownow.co.uk. Powwow Now. Let's get it done.
For me, the luckiest boy in the world's my little brother. He gets to share all my things. You like sharing my dinosaurs, don't you, Charlie?
But they're my dinosaurs.
We share our room.
I'm not allowed on your side.
You share my clothes.
They're your old ones.
You ride my bike.
I can't, it's too big.
But you'd like to. That's almost sharing. So later, Charlie's going to let me share some of his favourite Heinz beans on toast.
Ha! Not likely.
For kids that are full of beans, it has to be Heinz.
It's 5:46. News headlines. Simon Conway.
More than 60,000 homes are without power across the UK as a huge storm hits. Winds of more than 100 miles per hour have been recorded in North Wales. Chief Secretary to the Treasury Danny Alexander has signalled to LBC that a currency union with Scotland would be blocked by the government if Scotland votes for independence. The party drug ketamine is to be reclassified from a Class C drug to a Class B, which could lead to tougher sentences for those caught carrying it. The weather, severe winds gradually easing, some wintry showers later tonight, lows of 1 degree. This is LBC, the travel's next.
You are dynamic. Like a beatbox symphony, you quicken the pulse. Sure, you're made of metal, but it must be mercury, 'cause stillness doesn't suit you. You're an athlete on the blocks, head up and sprinting on the B of bang. Your wheels, they roll like a barreling wave, which makes me the surfer, and I'm gonna catch you if I can. You are dynamic. You are a Mercedes-Benz. And with £1,000 towards the finance deposit on all approved used C-Class and E-Class models at 9.9% APR representative, you've really got me thinking.
Search Mercedes-Benz approved used. Offer ends 30th of April 2014. Models over 90 days old. Credit subject to status. Mercedes-Benz Finance.
I'm Amy Solomon in the LBC Travel Centre. I'm still seeing queues on the clockwise M25 around from 28 at the Brook Street roundabout to the Dartford crossing. It's after they had to close the bridge earlier because of the wind. Anti-clockwise is solid from Junction 4 at Orpington too. On the northern stretch, anti-clockwise is still queuing between 25 at Enfield and 22 at London Coney after some debris was blown onto the road earlier. In Poplar, the A13, that's queuing out of town from the Rotherhithe Tunnel on camera. It's still closed near Upper North Street along East India Dock Road for accident investigation works. And after the wind in the city, Minories is closed northbound near Tower Hill as some scaffoldings become unstable. Whitehorse Road is open again now in Croydon, just near to Windmill Road after a building's roof collapsed. A very limited service is running between Paddington and Reading on the trains through to Oxford, with a journey time of around about an hour in addition to the usual after flooding. All trains through Gatwick Airport are being delayed by around 20 minutes. That's because of a signalling problem. Keeping you moving. Your next travel update's in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoToMeeting. Avoid those delays by meeting online from anywhere.
Darling, do you remember that man who used to be on the radio for Galliard Homes?
You mean the chairman of Galliard Homes, London's regeneration specialists?
Yes, they have a great new development, Royal Gateway London E16. Looks like a phenomenal opportunity to invest in London.
With uninterrupted views of the river and the Royal Docks?
Stop it, darling. This is an all-private development. The apartments have superb specifications and excellent transport links with Canary Wharf and City Airport less than 7 minutes away.
What about Galliard's unbeatable value with one-bedroom apartments costing from under £250,000, potentially 20% less than the competition?
Darling?
Don't miss this exciting opportunity at our sales weekend on February 14th, 15th and 16th at the Crowne Plaza Hotel XL. Call 020 7620 1500 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com.
With BMW Economics, you can now get a BMW 116i Sport 5-door sports hatch with a 6.5-inch colour display screen, sports seats and 17-inch alloy wheels for an extraordinary $225 a month. Or you could always choose something ordinary for the same price. For details of your local dealer, visit bmw.co.uk. 48-month hire agreement from BMW Financial Services, 2979 initial payment subject to status, UK only, guarantees may be required. Mileage and other conditions apply. Offer ends 31st of March 2014.
Galliard's Royal Gateway Apartments, 5 minutes from Canary Wharf. Unrivaled specification and views. Unbeatable value from £250,000. Visit galliardhomes.com.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
10 to 6 here on LBC. Ed Balls is with me. If you go to lbc.co.uk, you can watch us as well as listen to us. Now, Ed, I remember a couple of years ago when I was presenting the Sunday show, interviewing you while you were running the London Marathon. So you really went up in my estimation for agreeing to do that. Are you going to do it again this year?
I did 10 miles on Sunday around, I call it the Three Parks Run. It's Finsbury Park, Highbury, Fields and Clissold Park. And it's all on track. I'm going to do half marathon this weekend, and if it still builds fine, then I'll do it. The issue is, I say to people, can I pass the Ian Dale test? And people say, what?
I wish I knew what that was.
People say, do you mean running as fast as Ian Dale? To which the answer is no. The issue is whether you're in good enough shape that you can do a live interview with you on your show while running, which is what we did. I was thinking between mile 8 and mile 9. And
you do.
If I can pass the Ian Dale test at mile 20, then I'll do it again.
You'll have to rename it though, because it'll have to be the Larry Lamb test now, because he presents on a Sunday morning. I don't do that anymore. I think 5 days of me is quite enough, don't you?
No, I think Sunday morning would be... Anyway, I'm sure it would be great for Larry Lamb. But it's for Action for Stammering Children and WizKids, the disabled children's charity. So they're great causes.
Now, I read a piece not long ago where your wife, Yvette Cooper, was complaining that you're too busy playing the piano. You can't even get the kids ready for school. Presumably you've got something very special planned for Friday, if you get my drift.
Friday?
No, come on.
Oh, Friday.
Yeah. Valentine's Day.
Of course. I thought it was an outrage, her saying that, to be honest. I get up, make sure the children have had their breakfast, I'm all ready to go, and I then do a bit of piano practice while there's a spare 5 minutes, and Yvette's running around trying to catch up. She's always a bit lastminute.com and complains about me playing the piano because it distracts her from her last minute hurried, and she tries to claim that this is somehow because I'm not pulling my weight. The kids have had their breakfast already.
So what you're saying is the woman in charge of Home Affairs contingency planning is a bit lastminute.com. That fills us with great confidence.
I was doing a fundraiser for Chinese for Labour a couple of nights ago in central London, and apparently on the Chinese New Year celebrations, which last for 2 weeks, the first day of Chinese New Year is you do no housekeeping at all, no cleaning. And I just said to them all, I think, in our household with Yvette, it's a Chinese New Year every day of the year.
Oh dear.
She thought that was a bit unfair, actually. Actually, it is a bit unfair.
Your spin doctor's got his head in his hands through the glass there. I think we better go to a call. It's safer that way. Let's go to Ian in Redhill. Hello, Ian.
Hi Ian, how you doing? Hi Ed.
Hi Ian, thanks for bailing me out there, Ian. We were getting to deep waters there, weren't we? Can we cut that bit in? Can we take that out?
No, it's live.
Oh no.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, well.
I'll make sure it's taken out the podcast.
We are where we are then.
Ian, go on. What's your question?
Yeah, sure. Right, you might not appreciate this one, Ed, but I'm going to ask a couple of really straight questions because myself, I think 98% of the population of this country are really, I'm going to speak candidly, are really fed up with the bickering that goes on and the way that politicians carry on, really, in Parliament.
Yep.
I direct that to the sort of the way that you say, oh well, we can't do this because we're having to clear up the mess from the last government, and we're having to clear up this mess and that mess. They left us in a terrible mess, blah blah blah. When the reality is, you just need to stand there and square face tell us how it is and how you're going to sort it out. Because there's an awful lot of what I deem as childish playground attitude and behaviour that comes from the people that are in charge of our country, which to me is terribly troubling.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on this, and why do you carry on like this? Because you've been doing it even on this radio show, and I'll be honest, it's boring.
I've not been attacking the government much on this radio program, have I? Not much. I think it's. I mean, look, Ian and I have, laughed about Yvette and 8:25 in the morning, but we've not been sort of being too lashing out party political.
I think what he's partly talking about is what goes on in the chamber of the House of Commons, which people do perceive. There was a Hansard Society report, we discussed it yesterday, where people do perceive it as childish. You're doing your sort of flatlining signals and having a go at Cameron when he's talking. He's having a go at you, and it does annoy a lot of people.
Well, look, today in Prime Minister's Questions, there was a very serious debate about the flooding, very difficult issue all across the country, the things which we need to do to sort that out. The Prime Minister has said that he wants to commit more money to this, and we were asking serious questions about whether that would mean he would reverse the redundancies of staff members who do flood defences for the Environment Agency. Ian, those are important debates for us to have, and sometimes there's going to be differences. I can tell you, look, very straight, that I agree with George Osborne when he says Britain shouldn't join the single currency, the European Union, the euro, because I don't think we should either. And I was very much part of us not joining the euro. We agree on that. But when George Osborne says, for example, he supports the bedroom tax, which at the moment is having a very damaging impact on lots of vulnerable people in our country who can't move and are having to lose income because they're told they have to pay a penalty for having a spare bedroom, sometimes because they have their partner needs to sleep in it because they have a disability. I think that's wrong, and I'm going to disagree with George Osborne on that. So there are serious times.
How you disagree, isn't it?
Sure.
People perceive sometimes the disagreements as not based on principle, just based on pure party politics and childishness.
Well, look, in Parliament, it's very intense, it's very loud, it's very close together, and sometimes it's I think very frustrating for people, as Ian said. It's partly why people watch it all around the world, but I'm not sure if it's always so edifying. The interesting thing, though, is when, for example, the Scottish executive set up their own new parliament and their own questions, it sort of went the same way quite quickly. I think there's always going to be a bit of knockabout, and in the House of Commons, humour sometimes can be a very important way of making a point. If I'm honest with you, I think that David Cameron goes to the party political attack more quickly than previous Prime Ministers, and he is a Prime Minister who is much, much less likely to answer a question than any Prime Minister I can remember in the last 20 years, and sometimes our side gets frustrated about that.
We've got a minute and a half left. Ian, thanks for that.
Cheers, Ian.
Keith is in Rickmansworth. Keith, I've got to ask you to ask a very brief question.
Hi, Keith.
Hi, Ed. Ed, you don't have to kowtow to Tory and Blairite policies of cutting. Labour can't take for granted the core old Labour vote any longer. You've got to start behaving differently to the Blairite years. Yep. Now, my question to you is about energy. Do you not think it's high time that when you get into office in 2015, that you set up a not-for-profit public company of energy which doesn't use profiteering, privatised
Okay, Keith, we got the question. 30 seconds.
Keith, we need to tackle the cost of living crisis in our country. We need an economy which works for working people. I don't think the best way to spend billions of pounds is to renationalise the energy companies, but I want tough regulation and a 20-month price freeze to give people a fair deal. I want to repeat the bank bonus tax to get young people back to work, a compulsory jobs guarantee. I would like to raise the bank levy so we can do more to help working parents. I think that we should be getting the deficit down, but in a fairer way, by bringing back the 50p tax rate while we get the deficit down. It's a different policy. It's a Labour policy. It's about jobs and growth, but it's also about fiscal discipline. We'll deliver, and I hope you support us.
Keith, thank you for your question. Ruth in Watford says Yvette is probably putting super glue on the ivories as we speak. Ed Balls, thank you very much indeed for joining us over the last hour. We hope you'll come back again soon, because a lot of people have got a lot of questions to ask. Apologies to everyone that we didn't get on in the last hour. Coming up after 6, we're going to turn our attention to the big flooding crisis that is facing the country now. What responsibility do we have to people who don't or can't insure themselves? And how do we help people get back on their feet after experiencing their house being flooded? 0845 6060 973 is the number to call. We'll also get a weather report, a weather forecast from the one and only Michael Fish. So the question for the next hour, do we have a responsibility to help people who don't or can't insure themselves?